I have this better mood. I have this carnivore bliss most of the time where I'm just in a wonderful mood. I think that's my favorite part of it. Well, a warm welcome to you all. This video is about why carnivore is not just about the food. I'm JJ, I'm a life coach, and I eat mostly meat.
I'm Eric, I'm a novelist, and I eat beef, bacon, butter, eggs, and coffee.
We've gotten several comments recently asking exactly what my journey has been like for carnivore. I talk about fasting, I talk about eating mostly meat, and what does that look like? Inquiring minds want to know. So I wanted to sort of walk through my whole process and my thought process as I moved from fasting and really that introduction to the proper human diet into eating mostly meat and what my day looks like now.
But at the top, you said carnivore isn't just about the food.
It is not just about the food. We are going to get there in just one moment.
Okay.
Or maybe two. I have a history of hormone imbalances. My 30s were a hormonal nightmare with fibroids and miscarriage and all kinds of stuff. And kind of what I realized at that time was so much of our body is dependent on our hormones. And I'm talking all the hormones, not just the sex hormones. Weight loss had to be hormonally driven as well. So the whole calories in, calories out thing didn't really jive for me. I mean, I did Weight Watchers after being pregnant to get back to my pre-pregnancy weight, but it also wasn't sustainable. Calories in, calories out. So I knew that if I was ever going to move into a weight loss journey, that it had to be sustainable, simple, and that it had to make sense hormonally to me. So flash forward to 2021, I started seeing a new integrative hormone doctor. And I'd already seen some, but this guy, he's phenomenal. And the first thing he prescribed to me was intermittent fasting. Now, we didn't go into big details in that doctor's appointment. He just basically told me what to do, and he thought it would help with my insulin resistance.
So you had signs of insulin resistance at that point?
I had signs of insulin resistance at that point, including this weight gain that had happened really quickly, like 15 pounds in a month or something. It was ridiculous. And so, yeah, I was showing signs. And he was the first one who brought that up. So I started fasting the way we hear about fasting on the internet. And the way I've heard you talk about fasting too. I think you were doing bulletproof coffee at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that you can have fat. Like fat is free, right?
A certain amount, yeah.
A certain amount of fat is free. And that you could, as long as you stayed under 50 calories, you didn't break your fast. So that's how I started. That was in July of 2021. So I was doing about an 8-hour eating window, white knuckling it. I would wake up and have this caffeine fruity drink, low calorie, and white knuckle it till about 10:30 when I would open my 8-hour eating window and have about 3 meals a day, snacking, grab those nuts on the way through the kitchen, right? The cashew bowl.
Yeah, the cashew canister was a dangerous place.
Very dangerous. And so I didn't really see much happening. Several months passed, I didn't really notice anything with the fasting. It's now March 2022, and I get introduced to Jen Stevens. I don't have any idea how she came up for me, but she wrote the books Delay, Don't Deny, Fast, Feast, Repeat, and she's got a newer one out called the 28 Day Fast Start. So she was all about intermittent fasting, and I read her book. It's not too sciencey. She's a teacher. And she does not follow a low-carb lifestyle or anything, but really is about fasting. And she solved her obesity problem through IF, intermittent fasting. So I read her book, and she emphasizes the clean fast. Now, the clean fast is about not having anything to raise your insulin when you're fasting at all. And so it introduced this whole idea to me that having that fat in the morning does create a rise in your insulin. Not a large one, but it does. And anything that touches your tongue, especially its sweetness, causes a cephalic phase insulin response. And this was kind of mind-blowing to me. I was like, wait a minute. That fruity, low-calorie drink that I eat every morning isn't working for me. It's actually breaking my fast if we look at insulin, not blood sugar, but look at insulin. And so I started clean fasting at that time, March 2022.
Okay. Connect the dots. Why is having insulin going up important?
Yes. Insulin is a hormone. And insulin is a hormone that causes us to store energy. It takes the sugar out of our system and keeps our blood sugar stable by shuttling some of that energy, some of that sugar into our liver to be stored as glycogen, and also the excess to our fat cells to store for future use. So when insulin is up, we are in energy storing mode, also known as fat storing mode. So connecting the dots was if I had this inkling that if I kept my insulin down during fasting, that I might start to see a healing of my insulin resistance. Now, I was looking at weight loss as well. I never want to forget that that was there, but that was really secondary. I really wanted to just make sure my body was running optimally from a hormonal state, and that would translate eventually to weight loss. So I started implementing the clean fast. The clean fast does allow black tea, green tea, or black coffee, because apparently the bitter tastes of those items does not cause any insulin raise. That is the theory. Maybe it's even been proven. I don't know. But I switched over to, I started craving cold brew coffee, which I'd never drunk coffee before, but started coffee. And guess what?
What?
Didn't see weight loss.
Wah, wah, wah.
But within 2 weeks, I saw my allergies getting better. So I knew that the systems were getting better and healing. And that really is what I held on to, because I didn't lose weight for quite a while. So I go to the doctor and I'm like, guess what? I'm clean fasting. I'm only having water or coffee or tea when I'm fasting. And he gave me a little smirk. He's like, what were you doing before? I said, well, I was having this fruity, low-calorie caffeine drink. He's like, yeah, I didn't tell you to do that. I said, but the internet. He's like, yeah, that's not how you do it. You can imagine this, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because he's now your doctor,
Yeah.
too. So I totally missed that in that July doctor's appointment, but I was finally on board the fasting train. Now, some of you have asked, what were you eating at this time? The answer, during my eating window, whatever I wanted still. Really? I was still doing the drive-by cashews. I was eating. My window quickly shrunk to 6 hours, though, because I just wasn't as hungry. Like I started to become actually fat adapted. Now, fat adaptation doesn't happen right away. Jen Stevens talks about this really well, that you have to get rid of the glycogen stores in your liver. And when you are a sugar burner, carb burner, that can take weeks. It doesn't just like go away unless you do an extended fast. If you're intermittent fasting, it can take weeks, which is why she suggests 28 days of fasting commitment. So I was eating anything I wanted at that point, tra-la-la, not losing weight. Well, then I hear about Dr. Jason Fung. Yes. He is, a nephrologist?
Yep.
And he is a big proponent of fasting and wrote the diabetes code and the obesity code. I bought the obesity code and I read it, and it gets into more science around insulin. Insulin at that point, and this is July of 2022, insulin became my absolute focus. Lower my insulin. And he talks about insulin being weight gain, and especially insulin resistance happens when we have high insulin levels and persistent insulin levels. So he talked about how back in the day when we were growing up, you generally ate just 3 meals a day, maybe an after-school snack. I had an after-school snack. But that causes pulses in insulin. So your insulin rises with breakfast and then it has a chance to go down. And it rises with lunch and has a chance to go down. And then, of course, dinner, same. And then you get a long break where your insulin can go even further down and you can start to deplete those glycogen stores.
So if someone is eating popcorn after dinner watching a movie or getting up in the middle of the night to have a snack, it's causing the insulin to bounce back up.
It does. It
So
does.
you're not getting as long of a fast.
You're not getting as long as a fast. But what also does it is snacking.
Even during the day.
During the
between
day.
meals.
Yeah.
Now, it used to be, we were told, you need 4 to 6 meals, small meals per day, of nasty vegetables and dry chicken breast in order to maintain your weight.
Right. To keep your metabolism running. You want to keep, you don't want your blood sugar to go too low. It won't, by the way, because the system is set up with another hormone that helps with that. But we actually want those pulses. And we want our insulin to not be high and persistent. We want it to be lower set point, and to move in pulses. So at that point, I stopped snacking. Holy cow, that was hard. And it wasn't because I was hungry. It was because of that cashew canister.
That was for our health.
It was a healthy snack,
I
right?
put it on my salads.
Yeah, and I didn't even eat. I just grabbed a few. Just a few. It wasn't that many. But every time I was raising my insulin.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
It wasn't a huge spike like you would have after waffles or a piece of cake.
Right.
But it was enough.
That I was,
what you're saying.
Yeah, because it's not about it going, I mean, we don't want it to have a huge spike, but we don't want that persistence. And that was the issue. And persistence can even happen with that cephalic response. So I was not drinking anything sweet tasting between meals either. So it looked like this. I would have again, I'm eating anything I want at this point. And I would have my meal. And if I had a Zevia, we were really into stevia sweetened soda at that time, I'd have it with my meal so that my blood sugar and my insulin could lower afterward. And again, really hard because I was just in the habit of snacking. And I didn't realize it until
You stopped.
I stopped. So that was my non-negotiable at that point, was to maintain a 6-hour eating window, no snacks. And even when we went on vacations, we did some cruising at that time. My eating window was a little longer because of the cruise eating schedule, but no snacking and maintaining that pretty much 2 meals a day. Guess what? I didn't lose weight yet. But again, I was feeling better. Now you come home and you talk about
Protein.
how we should all be getting more protein.
I heard a podcast with Tim Ferriss or Dr. Attia, I don't remember which, and the guest was a researcher into wanting to pulse mTOR by having large amounts of protein all at once in one meal, at least 30 grams, and then not eat so that mTOR could be deactivated. But in total, adults were needing way more protein than they were getting. And I was like, I thought I was supposed to only eat the size of my hand per meal of protein, and Americans get too much protein as it is. So I had a severe cognitive dissonance.
I did too. And my cognitive dissonance resulted in a bit of a eye rolling when you were, behind your back. Yeah. Okay, more protein, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yep.
But it planted a seed.
Okay.
And you even talked at one point about the carnivore diet.
Yeah.
Well, somehow at that point, I think Siri was listening because I was still eye rolling and not thinking carnivore at this time. But Dr. Berry
Started coming
up in my YouTube feed. I have a Band-Aid Dr. Berry finger today. And I started to listen to him, and he's very entertaining, and I didn't buy in right away. But then suddenly, something clicked because he talked a lot about insulin resistance, and it's especially in terms of type 2 diabetes. And I realized that what I was eating during my eating window was keeping my insulin higher. So if I look at Dr. Fung saying high insulin, persistent insulin, I'd done work on the persistent insulin, but high insulin, I could still be lowering it. So again, insulin lowering was my goal. Now, ironically, you can't really measure insulin a whole lot at home, right? You can do fasting insulin.
Yeah, but
Right.
that's not an at-home test.
No, it's not. So it's funny because I marched into our doctor and I said, on my next blood test, I want fasting insulin. And he said, I've been doing fasting insulin all along. Who knew?
Well, you could have looked it up.
I could have looked it up, but I just wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
You wanted to hear my journey.
Yep.
Here's my journey.
I used to obsess over blood test results, and I would get so nervous in anticipation of opening the dashboard to see the results that I would have heart palpitations and shortness of breath because I was so terrified of what I would learn. And you would just look at your results and kind of glance at it, and you didn't care as long as the doctor wasn't too worried about it.
Yeah, that's about
And
it.
even if the doctor was worried about it, you just didn't care.
Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. But but I've been always sort of internally focused on my energy levels and my vitality since I had my 30s decade be a decade of fatigue, depression, low energy, low mood. That's been sort of my focus. I've got Carnivore coming across my feed, and I'm listening to the stuff. Great. I'm not in yet, but what I've realized is that through fasting, I have created some space between me and food, between me and those cashews.
Yep.
I have created this sort of binary switch where I'm either eating or I'm not eating, and I'm doing fine with that. I learned that hunger comes in waves and then it goes away. As a matter of fact, I have an 11:30 hunger pang almost every day, and then it grumbles a little bit, and then it's gone. No problem. So I suddenly have the space between me and the cashews mentally. I'm no longer driven by food. And I've gotten in touch with my hunger signals through fasting. So for me, I don't know if I could have done carnivore without fasting first. Because at this point, I know when I'm truly hungry and when I'm truly not. So most of my days are those 6-hour eating windows, but they vary a little bit. And I know if I'm seriously hungry, I'll open my window a little sooner. So I'm not being super, super dogmatic about it. I'm listening to my hunger cues. And I start to think about this insulin situation. And I'm like, I guess I'll try carnivore because I know that that's a nearly zero carb diet. And that is going to bring my insulin levels down even more and help heal my insulin resistance. So I do that. And I don't lose weight right away. But it's not long before the weight starts happening. But what really starts happening is the body recomposition at that point. And I start to feel more energy and better mood, and everything is just brighter and sunnier, and the world is in color like after Dorothy lands in Oz, and it's incredible. So I know that my body's healing. I know that insulin resistance is a huge problem for me, and that my goal of getting the insulin lower is doing positive things in my body. And so I am like, I'm totally on board with it. That's it. That's it. Now, what am I eating at that time? You want to know, right, Amy? You want to know. So at that time, I'm still sticking to mostly 2 meals a day. I am eating mostly meat. I'm not snacking. I'm still eating my element, but I'm eating it with my meal most of the time, right? Because I want to pulse that insulin and let it go down. If I'm truly hungry, I might have a snack, a carnivore snack. Once a week, I go out to eat with a friend. If there's a carnivore option where we eat, I eat that. But there's this one place we love in Lake Geneva because it's right on the lake, and they serve sandwiches and salads, and that's it. There are no carnivore options. So about when we eat there, which can be up to once a week, I'm having a salad. And that's what I'm eating. We go on vacation. I'm a little looser, but my non-negotiable is still that fasting. So that's how I started carnivore. That's how I started losing weight on carnivore, was eating mostly meat, but having that salad about once a week. Since then, that is mostly what I've maintained. I've gotten a little stricter at home, a little cleaner at home. There's less, not that they're not clean, but I don't want pork rinds anymore. They're not that good. But when I started, the pork rinds were in, there was more dairy. So things have narrowed as I've gone, but it's all been this natural process that I was looking for all that time that really fed my hormones and my system so that I could be healthy and vital.
So did you track your macros at that point?
No, I did not. So I started carnivore in October of 2022. I didn't track a single macro till this year, 2024. And I've done it just to play around and experiment and tweak. So no tracking, just again, being able to follow my hormones and my hunger cues.
And so the meat would be red meat like steaks and hamburger?
No, not always, because you like variety, or at least you did. So even when you jumped on the carnivore train, we'd have chicken wings. You like hog log, also known as pork loin, right? So I would throw other meats in there, but usually eating beef every day at least once.
How about eggs?
I'm not as big on eggs.
Bacon?
I've recently leveraged bacon a little bit more. More recently, I've been playing around with my fat a little bit, sometimes doing it higher, sometimes doing it lower. And notice that if I do lower fat, which again, not low, it's still 140 grams of fat a day. I've noticed that I need a little fill-in of bacon every now and then.
Do you ever just stab a stick of butter with a fork and start eating it like Bella does?
Not the whole stick of butter, but yes, I have eaten butter. Just like, not all at once, but...
So last night we had pork tenderloin.
Correct, yeah.
And afterwards, you supplemented with some fat.
I did. I had some cheese slices with fat on them, with butter.
Butter is what it's
with
usually
butter.
called.
Yeah, that is what it's called. Yeah, so I absolutely put some butter on there.
What non-scale changes have you noticed since doing this?
So I have had my allergies, like I said, that happened with fasting really quickly. My allergies have resolved really well. I have less snoring at night, you've told me.
That's true, yeah.
Which is nice, yeah. I've been able to reduce my thyroid medication. My other hormones that I get, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, those have gone down as well. So I really think my systems are running well. I've had that body recomposition, more definition of muscles than I've ever had in my life.
Let's see it.
Here's mine.
There's the gun show.
Ooh, yeah, there
you
it
go.
is. Ooh.
And you don't lift weights a lot.
No, I do not. I do not lift weights a lot. I've been trying to introduce it so that I can maintain that muscle mass, lean muscle mass as I age. Speaking of exercise, I used to have exercise intolerance, and I am able to have a much more active life now.
So what did intolerance look like?
Intolerance, in the really bad days, it looked like if I took my daughter to a fair or something, I'd be laid out for 2 or 3 weeks.
So that's not even exercise.
2 or 3 months.
That's just life intolerance.
Life intolerance. 2 or 3 days, not months, by the way. Yes, that's just life intolerance. And if I tried to exercise, I would be asleep for the rest of the afternoon and again have 2 to 3 days of recovery after that. So it was not good. So now I'm able to be active. I have life tolerance. I'm able to do exercise. We've done sprinting. I bicycle a lot. I kayak. All that I can do with no problem at all. I have this better mood. I have this carnivore bliss most of the time where I'm just in a wonderful mood. I think that's my favorite part of it.
And as far as body changes, you've lost weight on the scale?
I'm nearing 30 pounds now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And your clothes, what size changes have you noticed?
I was about a size 12, a snug size 12 when I started. I just bought a size 4. Yeah, so that was really fun. My waist has gone from about 31 inches down to 28 and a half. That's nice. My hips, I think I've lost about 4 inches in my hips as well. I've lost cellulite, which is, I didn't even realize till who knows when. I was like, wait a minute, my cellulite's gone. That's amazing. And yeah, better skin. My complexion is better. I have a little bit of a ruddiness that I've gotten as I've aged, unevenness, and that's much, much better. Those bumps on the back of the arm, much, much better. My dry skin in the winter, much, much better.
Well, I think that your hair is a little bit less gray.
You think it might be a little less
Yeah,
gray?
it's hard to quantify since your hair is ash to start with.
It's been a wonderful ride, and again, my focus was not the scale, knowing the scale would follow. And then I really just focused in on insulin.
So going forward, what are you going to do?
I'm not making huge changes. I still like to use a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor every now and then to just see how my body's reacting to certain foods. Using that as sort of a proxy for insulin, because blood sugar and insulin sort of go hand in hand, where when blood sugar is high, insulin comes in to lower it. So I'll still do some experiments around food, but really it's just a tightening up of carnivore for the most part, and not being too dogmatic. I don't eat any grains like ever anymore. I think I will for Thanksgiving. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. But yeah, just mostly a continuation, and maybe just the natural narrowing that I think happens when you find this diet to be so amazing.
So one of the big takeaways that I've kind of learned from listening to you talk about this, because you've never actually said all of this in a row in my hearing,
No.
is it is focusing on insulin, having all of your thoughts about how you're arranging your fasting and diet and macros and stuff is really about trying to solve that puzzle.
Right.
Even though you can't measure insulin day to day.
Right. That's the funny part about it.
So it's kind of like driving without headlights, but it's not totally, because we do understand that carbs in general are going to be the worst offenders.
Yeah. Yes.
You eliminate that first. And you went to intermittent fasting to make sure you had at least one long break between your last meal and your first meal, because that gives the insulin a chance to settle down and glycogen to be used up from the liver.
Correct.
And then you progressed to getting rid of most of the carbs.
Snacking first,
And then getting rid of the carbs. And that's when you finally started to see weight loss happen.
That is.
And so when we get comments or people saying, I've been doing carnivore for 10 months or 2 years and I haven't lost weight, there's something going on with hormonally. And the answer is maybe not in the macros, it might be in a fasting window.
It might be.
If you're really, really strict carnivore,
Yeah.
that would be the place to look, is what it sounds like.
That would be. Which reminds me, I forgot to mention, I did only eating windows, like daily eating windows, up until 2024. And only then did I personally introduce a longer fast, which is usually about 42 hours for me. And I do it about 2 to 3 times a month. That's it. And again, it was sort of to experiment with it. And mostly that insulin, how can my blood sugar go lower if I have a more extended fast, thus letting that insulin go lower as well. So I didn't even play with that. But I do hear recommendations that, again, if you're having a stall, you might want to play around with a 24 to 36 to 48 hour fast.
But it would make sense first to get the food freedom.
Yes.
So that you're not suffering through the whole thing. And also get into ketosis first and get fat adapted.
Right.
Then the longer fasts are way more doable.
Exactly. They're not even hard at that point. And that's another thing I want to emphasize is mine was a really natural progression.
You actually get super blissful at times during fasts.
Yeah, love it.
As the ketones go way up.
I don't like that I don't sleep at night when I'm fasting, but I just accept it.
Yeah.
Like that's just part of it. Yeah, because I have so much energy and the body's awake.
And those longer fasts are getting you more into autophagy.
Yes.
To clear out all of the gross, dead, nasty cells and mitochondria and precancerous cells. And I mean, that was really scientific what I just said right there. But it is the case.
It is the case, yeah. So I'm doing it now, not for weight loss. When I do an extended fast, it's for all those other benefits.
How's your trick ankle?
I dare say, I've been thinking about this
Have you?
lately. I was in a car accident when I was about 20 years old, and I sprained my ankle, and I am a dancer, and so I've used the ankle well through the many years, but it will slip, the tendon will slip, and it causes a lot of pain, it has a lot of swelling, et cetera, et cetera. And I've recently been going, I think it's better. The pain's better, it's not slipping as much. Yeah, it's remarkable. But this is the first time I'm actually saying it out loud, but I've been thinking it in my head, like worried that I'm going to curse it. But I'm like, no, I think it is actually markedly improved, which is, again, a life changer. Because I was like thinking that I might need to have surgery on this ankle at some point, which I don't really want to have if I can help it. But it seems like it's better. Well, one of the reasons I didn't preach and tell this whole story to you is I'm not going to preach to you, right?
Thank you.
I'm not going to tell you what to do. And one of the things, though, that I did notice is you would keep a steady stream of sweet drinks throughout the day,
Yes.
almost constant.
But I wasn't thinking in terms of insulin. I was thinking in terms mostly of protein, fat, and carbs and calories. And so I felt that an artificially sweetened soda was kind of free. Now, I had heard of the cephalic phase response to sweet tastes, or even the anticipation of eating something sweet. But when I wore a CGM and then I drank Zevia, which is sweetened with stevia, I saw no bump. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there wasn't some sort of incremental insulin rise. And it might have been detected in a blood sugar lowering, but I didn't scrutinize it close enough to tell. So I had gotten down to about 180, 181, and I'd been staying there for months and months and months and months, and I was pretty satisfied, but I still had fat to lose to get to what I felt was a more fit body composition. And so I decided to look at my diet. We did an entire video where I tracked everything I ate for a week and analyzed it, and quickly found some carbohydrates sneaking in and a lot of artificial sweeteners. I eliminated those two things, and immediately, you noticed within 5 days,
You didn't look as puffy.
I didn't look as puffy.
And I didn't know you were puffy.
So there was some inflammation caused by that food. It was keeping me at where I was at. It's a little hard to say yet because the change in the scale won't necessarily be obvious because I can continue to put on lean mass during this period and it can kind of exchange for fat. We shall see. I have been snacking occasionally if I'm really hungry, but it's not ideal to have lunch and then 2 hours later have the deer jerky and then 3 hours later have dinner. It'd be much better for me to drop that. And I think I will endeavor to do that.
I'm not recommending anyone follow what I do. It is always your own personal experiment.
But it's an amazing way to hear the story and understand your thought process because you can begin to apply the thought process to your own diet.
So I hope this has been useful to you walking through my thought process. And what I want to really say is what I did was take those incremental steps. I didn't rip off the Band-Aid all at once. And it's something that anyone can do. You can do this as well. So if you're new to your journey or you're experiencing a stall, just know that you can do this. You can keep moving forward in a way that's right for you. And it is absolutely worth it on the other side.